long, but I wanted now, just because I know that we got to wind down the show soon, but I wanted now to just touch on your projects. Dave, I wanted to go to you first, and then Tom, I know that we've got a little bit of alpha that we want to share about PixFi. But Dave, really quick, what's going on at Taekion? What's new? I know I had you on the show months ago, so it's been a while, but I'm curious to know kind of what's going on in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, so just a couple of quick bullet points. I mean, we converted our dynamic consensus so that we use the public Hedera consensus service, and it's not the first beta. It was a private beta. It wasn't designed to be a public beta. And we signed up about 500 people. We didn't have that many people actually participate, but with a test net, we basically showed that you can drag and drop with a web page using a connector to Hashpack and basically a Chrome extension with where your keys are stored. You can, within a couple of seconds, drag and drop files off your computer and store them. And our system stores all the files fully on chain. It's not a distributed file system like IPFS. And it uses a private blockchain, but it uses the public Hedera consensus. So we're finalizing some of our innovation capital contracts with the National Science Foundation. I think people know we got funded by U.S. Air Force, DOD, and DOE in the past. And so we're now reaching this sort of end of the R&D prototyping stage of our project. And around Q3 of this year, we'll be not doing the government innovation grants anymore. And so what we're doing now is raising capital, looking for resources to launch a mainnet and still built on Hedera, and basically become really more around. We've gone from we were really funded to protect critical infrastructure. I've worked on a lot of critical infrastructure software projects in my career. And we were really funded to protect critical infrastructure, but Web3 is a different animal. So we're really kind of moving down a path of the verifiable web about how do you build a system that allows you to have authenticity and integrity of data in the era of decentralized systems. And so if you look at AI, my background is I actually built a very large multi-agent system, AI-based platform. And the trust wasn't there. That's why I decided to build on Hedera. It looked to me like one of the best platforms to build on. So we're continuing down that path. We want to launch a mainnet and launch a token, but we haven't been able to do that while we're still under contract. Right. And so in the next year, we're going to just pay attention to my tweets and what Taekion is saying. We've been a little bit stealth underground, and as Brandon just pointed out, we kind of took our website down and just made it a landing page, because as we shift to a Web3 mainnet, it's a very different animal. And so our hope is to really continue to build on Hedera and to bridge into the Hedera ecosystem. And there's a lot of partnerships. I mean, if you look at DPIN, the whole DPIN category is going to require the ability to have really high levels of data integrity and be able to protect against things. But where the direction we're going is around AI is essentially what's been determined is AI has now become so sophisticated that it's really impossible to say you're really going to be able to tell by using even AI to determine if something's fake. So what we're really doing is saying, register it with us first, it's fully on chain, and then over time we are going to machine and human attest to make that data more authentic and more verifiable. And so that's essentially, it's a purpose-built permanent data storage platform, but it could also be used to set up temporary data repositories in very critical environments. In fact, we did a use case with the US Air Force on a test range. And these were highly sophisticated, highly encrypted data sets. And they wanted to be able to have us look at it and say, we're only going to set it up for 2.5 weeks, and then we want you to destroy it. But during that time, while it's operating, it's mission critical. So I talk about this a lot. I mean, in some industries, you have mission critical, which means the mission fails. There's life critical, which is the worst one, where someone could die. And then there's privacy critical, which is a lot of the Web3 use cases. So essentially that's where we started, but now we're kind of morphing into where we're really going into the verifiable web area. And so it sits in kind of a DPIN. We're not Filecoin, we're not IPFS, we're very different. And the company has 3 patents, and we're really excited about our future. It's just it's been kind of a slow, when you're building a really complex R&D project like this and you're getting government funding, it's hard to think about commercializing until you get that done. So we're just wrapping all that up. We're very excited about it.
That's
and
so
and
awesome.
we also intend to have we always intend to have a retail kind of a web viewer, just simple web-based Dropbox available, but we can do much more sophisticated things for enterprises. We can take an entire file system of a whole network and turn it into a blockchain. So it's actually kind of really cool stuff. So very excited about it.
It is really cool. And what I'd say for anyone listening now, go back. I did an episode where I interviewed Dave. We took a deep dive into Taekion, which was very, very exciting. So really cool to hear those updates, Dave. That's awesome. And also too, to Tom, PixFi, you shared a couple goodies with me, a couple sneak peeks that we'll talk about, but I wanted to maybe kind of see what's new at PixFi. What are you guys working on? What's coming up?
Sure. Real quick, just to follow up with Dave, in terms of the retail Dropbox, is there an opportunity to basically have your system be a competitor to Arweave? So someplace to basically permanently store NFT metadata and image files?
Oh yeah. I mean, we're going way beyond that, but in terms of all those other distributed file system based approaches, which are not blockchains, by the way,
right?
We can do everything that they can do, and it doesn't cost anything more. So but the challenge there is you've got an industry that established themselves with IPFS and Filecoin and all these technologies, and so a lot of people are using these. So one of our challenges is how do we build awareness and use cases to get people to look at it, at least at first, as just an alternative to that.
Yes. No. Well, I mean, I think that was the challenge that Arweave has had as well, is trying to get people to see that. But I think the opportunity is presenting itself because, there's been a running spate now of issues with IPFS where, people open up their wallet and there's just no image file because if it's an older collection and it's not being readily accessed, then it's just basically being deprecated. And so I do think that there's, at least I know from our project perspective, one of the things that we're actually looking at is that, maybe we want to make sure that, our NFT collections related to sort of our own launchpad are going to be permanently stored, as opposed to putting things on.
One real quick thing that I wanted to say to that is that, so we're focused on data that if you lost it, it would be disaster. There's a lot of use cases for a lot of other, even like Hashinals, where you can just store like small NFTs. We're not competing with that.
No.
And we're also not talking about real-time data, like interval data, where you're not going to store all that on chain. We're talking about pick out the pieces like your GitHub repo or a training model for AI or something that's really extremely valuable, even your identity, things like that, or key management, things like that. So I don't see that we're really competing with those other systems. I think those are designed for kind of like larger scale, mass amounts of data to compete with like Google Cloud. We're not competing with Google Cloud. We're looking at a whole new category of what happens to some information over time if it gets compromised. And we want you to identify the stuff that if it gets compromised, it's really a problem for you. Otherwise, for NFTs, it's easy because we can do it just like anybody else can do it, and it doesn't cost anything more. It might even be cheaper. So I didn't mean to layer on top of what you were going to say. I just
think that right now there's at present there is the communities are starting to recognize that there is an issue with this reliance on IPFS. And so if there are alternatives, and if that's a retail market space for you, that would be quite interesting. But no, I can, one of the other things I look at when I look at what we're building at PixFi is I think about, there's the, there's sort of the JPEG fun, but NFTs are more than just monkey pics, right? So NFTs could also be real world assets. NFTs could be, in fact, your title for your automobile. Matter of fact, the state of California has a pilot program where they want to put automobile titles on Tesla's blockchain, right? So I think that's. But if those image files disappear, then those NFTs are going to be very difficult to have any sort of provenance on in the future state. So yeah. That's why I was sort of asking that question to sort of pique my interest there. But Brandon, back to your question. Right now, everything going on at PixFi is really leading up to the mint of our founders token collection. So as you know, our initial focus is building on 12 chains, and the wave we're going to basically release these in 3 waves. So the first collection up is up there. They are Ethereum, Hedera, Polygon, and Solana. So these founders tokens are gamified in their design. So we have, on them there's the chain symbol, which is basically a null state, but then we actually have an icon that's adjacent to that, and then there's five of the numbers are visible. And that all basically builds into the metadata, and we're going to basically use these within the community for just community building purposes. So we'll be able to raffle off whitelist spots for new NFT projects. We'll be able to have specific types of giveaways that can basically be based off of those founders tokens. Also, those founders tokens will also basically give you access to our INO, which will be held later in Q4 of this year for the release of the Pix token, which will be our loyalties and reward token. Our token, though, is going to be a little bit different. It's not just only going to be an HTS token. It will actually be a native token to all of the 12 chains that we're working on. So just like how USDC works, we'll also have our own internal transfer protocol where you'll basically be able to essentially burn and mint your Hedera picks and basically turn that into Ethereum picks for the cost of the gas fees for that transfer. And so this way, if you want to basically participate in liquidity pools over on Uniswap, you'll be able to do that. And then if that market is basically changing and you want to basically shift that over to, say, Jupiter and Solana, you'll be able to just basically do that sort of mint and burn process. So the whole perspective here is, how do you build a cross-chain NFT community? How do you get beyond that state of tribalism? And the easiest way to do that is to make sure that you have extremely mobile liquidity and be able to move that token around. And then, so on the front end, it's basically it's nothing more than multi-chain. It doesn't exist on any one chain. As a user, you're going to interface with our internalized profile wallet, which will basically allow you then to directly interact with marketplaces on other chains. So obviously, the first marketplaces that we integrated were OpenSea, Magic Eden, Centex, right, to represent these first 4. But as we then expand out, we start adding more and more marketplaces to that. And then once we have basically the major marketplace on each chain, then we'll start focusing on the secondary marketplaces on those chains as well. And so that's the marketplace piece. And then on the back end, and those are the tools that really start to come out next year, is when we basically start bringing in all of the NFT DeFi tools. So our own NFT-Fi protocol will initially focus on NFT rental and peer-to-peer loans. So that'll be a really good tie-in, I think, to the stuff that's going on with Bonzo, as well as it'll be a good tie-in with the activities at Saucer Swap and some of the dexes on other chains. But this way, people will be able essentially to take positions. And the advantage here is now you actually now have an NFT activities that don't even require you to own NFTs, right? If you want to be a lender, you can just basically be a lender and not have to worry about actually owning NFTs. And then we'll start adding all the other types of NFT-fi tools that exist in the marketplace. And there's some really innovative and cool ones that we can bring to the table. Obviously, there are there's your standard type of staking liquidity pools that involve pairing of a fungible token with a non-fungible token, and so those are going to be more like an AMM DEX style system. But there's also things like fractional ownership, where you can basically take a Bored Ape and basically convert that into fungible tokens, and basically divide that value and share that value. But then as a group, then basically you manage that NFT that you all own, in terms of being able to stake that, maybe do lending off of it and so forth. So there's a lot of interesting primitives and derivatives that you can drive from that type of tool. We're going to look at there's something on Tensor that's quite interesting. It's called Price Lock. Price Lock basically is a peer-to-peer activity where you have a floor price that you can track, and that tracking a floor price, say from an AMM style LP, is probably going to be the most reasonable way to approach this. But then Price Lock basically allows you to take side bets, essentially, right? So basically long and short positions on what that floor price will be in 1 or 2 weeks time frame. And so it's really sort of are things that basically sort of to drive sort of that degen behavior around NFTs, but also provide people sort of an opportunity to finally start extracting some of that liquidity that's basically just residing within those NFT collections. Creators like these tools a lot, because what that does is it takes a lot of the NFTs that normally would just be listed and just sort of sitting on a marketplace. It takes them out of that pool and basically helps drive sort of that floor price, which obviously helps those projects, because if they're getting royalties off of the trades that are resulting from that, if the floor prices keep accumulating, then that's basically then providing more capital to these projects to keep innovating and doing new things. So it's really the focus is to basically provide these types of opportunities for individuals, but also really to sort of help creators do new and more important things. And then the last thing that we're working on, and this is going to be directly tied to the way we're handling our NFT Founders Collection sale, is basically that becomes sort of the nexus and the basis for what will be our cross-chain marketplace. And so if you think about it, if you're an NFT creator and you really want to reach a maximum community, do you just want to only mint on Hedera and sell on Hedera? Or would you rather have the opportunity to say mint on Hedera, but then partition a part of that collection, and have some of those basically being offered for sale on Solana, and some being for sold on Algorand, and some of them being sold on Binance Smart Chain. So those types of opportunities just don't exist at this point in time. But we're building all the tools in the background to be able to eventually have that type of cross-chain launchpad capabilities. And again, the idea, the focus there is to allow for creators to really greatly expand their communities.
That's so cool. And I wanted to share some stuff. I know you sent me some cool screenshots. So if you don't mind, I'll pull them up. And maybe you can just quickly give us a rundown of what these are all about. But these appear to be some screens of what people are going to be able to expect from PixFi, a little bit of alpha here. So maybe, and I know we've got kind of two things here, but maybe you can kind of give us an idea of what we're looking at here.
Yeah, for the people that helped us and participated in the original alpha test, they've obviously seen these and had a chance to play around with these. But essentially, at the top or to your left is the landing page. So that's where when you open up the app, you're going to basically have sort of centralized view, and so the way that the designer basically created this is that we can have customizable banners that can really sort of highlight sort of key core projects that have some new new releases, new mints, activities going on. But then essentially you have your which is kind of standard. You have your trending categories, as well as your new collections that are going on there. And then from there, essentially we have sort of the discovery page. And the discovery page is where you can basically start to drill down a little bit more. Now you're basically selecting. You can select by chain. You can select by NFT type and collection type, and essentially sort of it's giving you sort of that collection view and all the different aspects that are related to that. And if you go to the next screen grab, and now this is where basically if say somebody selected the Dead Pixels collection, now you basically start to get sort of the drill down. You actually get to see what that collection looks like in terms of what's currently available that's being listed across the different marketplaces. In this particular case, it's Centex, but our hope is that within the Hedera ecosystem that we'll eventually be able to have the capability to be able to have all collections regardless of marketplace being displayed, just like that happens on the Ethereum network because of the Seaport protocol. So this is something that we know is being built at Swirls Labs. Actually, I think you mentioned Ash Oro before earlier in your program. So I know Ash and his team have basically been building sort of a Hedera version of the 0x protocol, which could essentially be utilized to create our own version, say, of a Seaport, which would then allow us to basically view collections regardless of where it's listed on the network, which will basically allow for the creation of more marketplaces. But also, to Dave's point, it will allow for projects really to sort of manage and focus on their brand, because they can just create their own marketplace microsites and manage their brand from that perspective. But this way, from a marketplace aggregator perspective, you'd be able to see where everything is listed. And then from there, we just go down into more of the detail. And in terms of the detail, you'll be able to see, attributes, metadata, and then we'll just keep adding more and more analytics into that workflow. So I love the stuff that Cantor Codes has been building, and I love his focus on NFT analytics. And so I think we'll have a really good opportunity if we can take data feeds from him and basically and have that there and allow for people to be able to see those attributes. That would be fantastic. Many other networks have sort of their own families of NFT analytics that you can basically draw data feeds from. So Nefertiti for most of the EVMs is probably the dominant one there. So that's, again, what we're basically trying to do is just make sure that everyone has access to the tools that they're going to want to make the decisions that they're looking to make.
Right on. I'm curious to see, Dave, did you have any questions for Tom on PixFi? Because I know he had some questions about Taekion. So now I'm curious to see if you had any questions about PixFi.
Well, it's funny because I've heard Tom's name, but we haven't met. But now we have, and a lot of our go-to-market on the Web3 side, if it's not just retail, just people individually taking their NFTs or digital assets or identity and putting it up on our system through our API. One of our go-to-market strategies is to work with marketplaces, work with wallets, work with all these entities that are Web3. And so essentially we could become, Tom, one of the alternative ways for your users to store your digital assets on our system. And we can expose that through an API. So we should talk. I think there's some really good collaboration opportunities with what you're doing. No, I like the idea that you're going, like you guys, we're cross-chain. We're, of course, use the Hedera consensus service, but we essentially can go cross-chain, and if necessary, we can actually do a non-tokenized L2 storage system for somebody like, the Air Force might want to store something and they may not want a token. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that, again, I think that this is, the real opportunities and the real power of the Hedera tech stack is, we don't have all those limitations that you might find in other places. And there are, some significant advantages. We spent a lot of time thinking about where we wanted to put the the DeFi tools. Were we going to build that on Polygon? Were we going to build that on some other chain? And essentially, we basically came to the decision looking at, when we start looking at it from a cost structure perspective, when we start looking at it from a transaction cost to the users, we start looking at it again, from sort of a security perspective. But the thing that always kept coming back and bothering me were the ability that validators could say, "Oh, that's a great deal. I'm going to take that for myself." I understand that that's an incentive for validators and other chains, but we don't have that on Hedera, and so it just means that if you're clever enough to find an opportunity, you should be able to have the assurance to know you're going to probably close that transaction.
Yeah.
And I think that when people on other chains actually start seeing that there's a level of fairness and fair play that come into this into that type of DeFi space, then I think that you're really going to start seeing a bit of a migration. And it's why we designed the Pix token to be polynative, like USDC is, because we felt that was going to be the easiest mechanism that we could convince people to say, okay, here's all these Pix tokens, and you can go play on Jupiter, you can go play on Uniswap, and so forth. But if you want to come and use these DeFi tools, you're going to basically move that Pix over to Hedera. You're going to be able to play here, generate your profits, and then if you want, you can head on back, take your profits back to where you came from and choose your home. But this way, we have a mechanism for people to basically readily and easily move things around. No bridges, no wrap tokens, no vulnerability, right? And so, I mean, I'll use the C word. The transfer protocol is centralized, but it's centralized for a very specific reason, and it's basically to make sure that we have the ability to do the attestation that we have actually taken your assets and converted them from one form to another.
I love the name, the transporter. It reminds me of the Star Trek transporter. The other thing that I wanted to point out is, like, for small medium enterprises, large corporations, if you haven't noticed, like in the past 5 years or 10 years, there's been all these data breaches, that goes into the dark web. So we can also store people's customer data.
Right.
And it's a completely different animal than it would be, if you had a multi-sig system set up in your organization, it would be pretty hard to imagine that happening. So it's frustrating to me because I see it all the time, and
I've experienced it.
Yeah, we've all experienced. I mean, everybody's been breached with Experian and all the major credit companies. And then when it happened to Ledger, though, that was, to me, was kind of like, okay, it's supposed to be the most secure way to store your keys, and they lost your customer data. I mean, it's like there's a little disconnect there. So one of the things we also could do, partner together, is we could store your customer data.
No, I think that's fantastic. Yeah, no, just a funny anecdote. I had a corporate business trip to Shanghai, and I was flying into China, and this was about 2 weeks after there had been a major security leak at the government at the government employee roles. My last name is very unique. I'm basically the last Bega in the United States, and so my dad was and used to work for the government and was in the Secret Service, and so my name was very unique. And when it came up on the screen in China, they asked my name. They asked they asked if they knew my father's name. And asked me to basically step aside and go into a little special room. And I spent time in a little special room in China, explaining to them what my business trip was about and why I was there. And then when they let me go, I got to my hotel, and at my hotel there was my shadow agent was there, and this this guy basically followed me around that whole business trip. And so, yeah, that was sort of my little story. And this was, this was what,
Cool.
2016, 2015. So, there are consequences to these data breaches. So yeah, for sure.
Well, it's actually the statistics are, according to IBM, it's about $4 to $5 billion for a not even a pretty a massive data breach, right? I mean,
Right.
but for a small medium enterprise, the issue is that companies go out of business. They
Yeah.
literally, like, they can't recover from it if you're not like a really established entity that has a lot of resilience. So, I mean, but you never hear about these stories because most people, it's like until it happened to them, it's just like some noise they heard somewhere else. I think in the era of AI, this stuff is going to get crazy, and
No,
that's what drives me about wanting to, you know, the whole trust layer to me was the reason why I got into blockchain. It was about, I was building decentralized systems, and all the engineers and electric grid industry were like, you're not going to have those agents controlling my electric grid, are you? And we actually demonstrated you could do that in Con
yeah,
Edison underground distribution network. We actually did a demonstration with the entire city of Manhattan when we virtually ran their grid with agents, and
right.
they were like, "Wow, this is really cool," but you're never going to do that
Right.
until some other things get done, and that was 10 years ago. So
So
it's
yeah, so I was going to say, I mean, I think I think the thing that's probably going to be important for you to also to look at and think about is as apps become more sophisticated, as people start focusing more on social login, as we're basically trying to demystify and take the take the stress and the strain off of people new to crypto in terms of how to manage keys. You're starting to see this great expansion of the use of social logins, and so I think that's where now projects are going to have more of a risk in terms of how they want to basically secure those things on the back end. Fortunately, our chief architect, Hank. Hank has spent a lot of time building very professional apps for corporations and government entities like the SEC and Wells Fargo Bank and some others. So he lives, breathes security all the time. So you and him would probably have a great
yeah, we
conversation.
should talk. We should talk, because the whole notion of decentralized identifiers, W3C, I've been on that working group for probably 6 or 7 years now. And it really is starting to take shape now in terms of an open standard, and then verified credentials are part of what we're doing. So yeah, we should talk. We could
Yeah.
geek out, I'm sure. I
Oh,
mean,
I'm
prior
sure.
to this call, I was on a really technical call, and then Brandon's like pinging me saying we're doing this show and we're talking about organizational structure. So my brain is kind of fried, but it's been fun.
No, but I mean, I think a lot of that ties in. And Brandon, your day job, right? So with Hgraph, I think there's probably a lot of interesting opportunities there as well. So yeah, no, I think this has really been informative. I think the last thing I'd probably have to say here, Brandon, is that our fate is whatever we want to make of it, right? So if we decide that we want to basically build a positive, inclusive, welcoming, fair, transparent ecosystem that has kick-ass technology, and just the best people in it, then that's what we're going to build. But we just have to choose to basically to say, you know what, there's problems, there's growing pains, and we need to basically acknowledge them. We need to be able to call them out. We need to be able to understand what corrective measures can be, and then just say, you know what, we've done our part, and now we're just going to basically focus on the build and just keep forging forward. If we can do that, then I think that we'll see the KPIs, right? I think we'll see the active daily users. I think we'll see the wallets created. We'll see the TVL. And the other metric that we haven't even talked about yet, we'll see the investment capital coming into the network as well. Because if we can drive all these other things, VCs are going to notice, and they're going to want to they're going to want to participate. And I think that's, I think that's going to be something that's going to be really important as we move forward, for all of us, and for the three of us actually. And I know many other founders are probably going to tune in and maybe watch this. Maybe you'll have some shorter segments, sound bites for them.
Of course.
But yeah, I think they're going to basically say, yeah, no, this is exactly this is how we feel as well. We're trying to basically be as positive as we can, and the market's not helping, but yeah, but our goal is to do things that nobody else is doing. And I think that between the three of us, I think we all basically share that that ethos, and that's what we just have to focus on.
I don't think I could put it better myself.
I mean, kudos to Brandon too for his show. I mean, he does such a great job of interviewing, and he's just so dedicated. And I met him out at the Hello Future thing in LA.
That's great.
We hadn't talked. Personally, I hadn't met you, but I'm really happy to meet you, Tom. And I just want to say one last thing on that whole. Like, we are in the process of talking to investors, and we're kind of in this sort of holding pattern because we're waiting to get everything structured correctly with their contracts. But most of the questions, the first thing they ask about when we talk about what DLT technology we're using, you'd think they'd start asking a lot of technical questions, but the first question they ask is, what's the liquidity on your network? Or they'll say, there's not a lot of liquidity on that network, and then I will respond to that. But it's just an interesting thing because it's one of the little, I guess, symptoms of some of the stuff we're talking about. Is
absolutely.
And it's important, and there are some people that believe that there's just going to be a blowout event, and I would love to see it, but until then we have to look at it very holistically, and I'm pretty hopeful about everything. I mean, I've stuck around for this long. I'm not going anywhere.
I mean, we do have some banks on the GC, right? Maybe they could, at least for a period of time, maybe park some liquidity somewhere and just help us get the attention that we need, so that other people go, oh, wait a minute, there's something going on over there.
I want to see an all hands spaces, which is probably never going to happen, but it's sort of like a dream where you get like.
That would be awesome.
The largest DLT community ever, had the biggest space ever. And it could just be half entertainment. I mean, we could just play music for God's sake. We don't have to do anything. Just get on the space and be there, be present, and play some music.